Hello, thank you for joining us. Welcome to this Texas Instruments Australia webinar tutorial event specifically tailored for Australian students studying the standard level and higher level international baccalaureate courses with the support of TI-nspire technology. Our panelist this evening is Bojina Graham. Good evening, Bojina.
Good evening, Brian. Good evening, everyone.
Lovely to have you with us, Bojina, as always. Your team of followers may already know that you are teaching at Wesley College in Melbourne. We've been doing teaching of both the VCE senior subjects and as well as the International Baccalaureate senior subjects, and has been an examiner for both of those jurisdictions, as well as a subject matter expert and writer, writer and presenter for the MAV and, of course, T Cubed. So I'll switch across to Bojina.
Thank you, Brian. So, all good. Let's start. What I would like to talk about today is something which will help you to manage your calculator, both the settings and various applications. Look about some useful shortcuts and various features which are available for our IB course. So to start with the settings, if we go to the home screen, which is this little house on your screen, if we press settings and document settings, we get this screen. So by default, the float is usually set to 6, but I will change it to 3. And the reason for that is that most of the calculations we do, we wish to give the answers to 3 significant figures. So float 3 will be quite important, but I also show how we can see more digits. So I say, we look at the float first, I say OK, and I go to the calculator screen. And let's say I will perform a simple calculation using the numerical solve from algebra. And I would like to solve the equation 2 to the power of x is equal to 3x, and we press comma x. And I press enter, and I get the answer using float 3 because it is a decimal answer. It is 0.458, which indeed is 3 significant figures. However, if I press up arrow and press enter, I can actually see this whole number. So even if the float is set to 3, I can still see more digits on my screen. There is another setting which is in the graph application. So I could go through home to select graph application, but we also can press Control I. And if I press Control I, I can see all the applications on my screen. So this time I will select graph, and I will enter 2 minus x squared as my first function. So this parabola has been drawn. And if I want to open the entry window, I can press Tab or Control G. So if I go Escape, I can also do Control G and the entry window open. So I will enter another equation, just a linear, and I can see that those 2 graphs intersect. If I go to menu, Analyze Graph, Intersect, I can capture this point of intersection. You have to do 1 by 1 intersection and the second point. So now I can see it's 2 decimal places. In case I would like to display more than 2 decimal places, I can go to menu, and there is another setting in the graph screen. And this setting also allows you to change the float, how many digits we can see, the graphing angle, grid, and other features. So let's say if I change it to 4 now, and you can see that automatically I can see 4 significant figures in this case. So that's what I did. I went to menu settings, and again I could change that back, and this automatically recalculates. The newest feature on our calculator is whether I am in the calculator screen or graph screen. If we click here, we automatically change between degrees and radians. That also works in the graph screen, so we don't need to go through settings. So it is a quite nice feature on the calculator. However, even if I'm in radians, and let's say I use my Control-I again to enter another calculator screen, I can do the following thing. Notice I'm in radians and I want to find inverse sine of, let's say, 0.236. So of course this answer is not given in degrees, it's given in radians. I could change it, but sometimes it might be more convenient to be in radians. So what's the other way of obtaining the answer in degrees? If I press Control Book or Control Catalog, you see the conversion error. So I press this error and then I type DD. DD stands for decimal degrees, and enter. And now my answer is displayed in degrees even though the setting is in radians. I can also override the radian setting. So let's say that I want to find tangent of 34.5 degrees. Because I'm in radians, if I put 34.5 wouldn't make much sense, too many radians. But if I press this button here, I can grab a degree sign. And now if I press enter, I'm getting the correct answer because the degree sign here overrides the prescribed radian sign. So that was our 2 major settings. If I go back to my settings and document settings, we talked about float and we talked about changing between radians and degrees. It is so much easier now because we can just click on the screen without going through document settings. Other settings on our calculator is exponential format. We'll keep it as normal unless you want to perform calculations in scientific or standard form. Then you could temporarily change to this. Real or complex, unless you're doing complex numbers, will be always in real. If you start on complex numbers, then we change rectangular or polar. So it keeps real. Calculation mode, we have 2 options, auto or approximate. The preferable option is auto, and we can still, of course, anytime obtain the approximate answer by doing Control Enter, which I will illustrate in a second. Rectangular for vectors, and also we always in decimal, we don't do hex or binary. So those are the default settings and they are fine. So if I say OK, and I go back, let's say to my calculator, I might use a fraction feature here, and let's say I say 1 to skip between those little squares. I use tab. Tab is quite important one, and let's say I go plus, and I have another fraction 3, and I can go 8 and enter. So I'm getting the answer, of course, as a fraction because I'm in auto and it will display the fraction, but pressing Control Enter will change it, of course, to a decimal answer as required. The other thing I would like to talk, what are other options on our calculator? Since I have quite a few things here, what I might do, I go to Doc and I will insert a new problem. And I will add another calculator. So now what I have on the top, I have problem 1 with 4 pages, and I start on problem 2. To see what problems and pages I have, I press Control top arrow, and I can see I have problem 1, and then I have problem 2. If I'm here and I press Enter, it gets me back to problem 2. Other useful features on our calculator are the template. So, of course, now we haven't covered much of the course yet, but we have our fraction here as well, and we have root of the nth degree, we have log, and then we also have something which is piecewise function. You will learn more about. You can have your degrees here, sigma notation when you start doing sequences and series. So that's our option here. And also if we go to menu, we have 3 main features which are available in the Press to Test: Numerical Solve, Solve System of Linear Equations, and Polynomial Tools. Numerical Solve, we have to be very careful. If we have a simple equation, yes, we can use this simple equation and it will solve. So let's try an equation. Let's say I have 2a minus 3, and I skip here and I press 5, and I might say minus, I will use another fraction, a, and go to right arrow, and I will say equals 3a and comma, I'm solving for a. So it gives me, in this particular situation, even though I entered the fraction, the non-cast calculator is giving me the decimal answer. If I wish to see what is the fraction here, because we expect to get a fraction, I go to menu, number, and I say approximate to fraction and enter. And the calculator displays a fraction. So if our answer is actually a fraction, this is quite useful to see what this fraction is, not just a decimal. As I said, numerical solve is not good for solving quadratics because it will only display one solution. So let's try something with numerical solve, and I will illustrate the difference between entering that in numerical solve and trying to solve graphically. So if I enter x squared and I say equals sine x, and I try to solve for x, I only get this answer. I could force the calculator to give me another answer by saying, what if my x is actually greater than 0? So if I press Control equals button, I have that given that x, and I tell the calculator given it is greater than 0, and I press enter. So yes, it will give me another solution, but there is of course a lot of guessing. Are those the only solutions, or would they be more? So if I press Control I again and get graphs, now I will actually enter my function x squared. And then if I press Tab, I can enter sine x and enter, and I can zoom in here by going menu, window, zoom in. because I want to see more what's happening there. It's still displayed, so I need to go escape. And now I do have two solutions, and I can see there won't be any more, so I can get those solutions graphically. And that is always a better way with our non-CAS calculator to solving if we are not sure how many solutions there are. And this is our obvious 0 solution. So let's say that we have a quadratic. I could do it this way, but I also can, if I go back to my calculator screen and scroll down, if I go to menu, I have another option here, which is called Polynomial Tools. And this one is find the roots of the polynomial. If I press that button and I want a quadratic, so it's degree 2, I want real roots, I say OK. And I can enter the coefficients of my quadratic, 2, -3, and 1, and I say OK, and I press enter, and I get two solutions. 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 has solutions x is a half and 1. I could also look at this quadratic in the graph screen and use the table feature. So let's say I get another graph screen, and this time I will enter 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. So I have my quadratic displayed. If I press Ctrl T, this is another shortcut, then I can see the table. So it tells me if x is 1, the value is 0. If it's -1 is 6, and if I scroll down, I can see various values. It might be useful in different applications. If I press Ctrl T again, the table disappears. So let's say I do my document and insert a new problem again, and I go to the calculator to illustrate the third very important feature, which is solve system of linear equations. I say, yes, I want to solve for 2, but not always necessarily for A and B. So I can change the variables and say that I want A and B variables. And I enter my equations. 2A minus 3 equals 0. Minus 3b equals 0, and let's say a plus b equals 1. Sorry, a plus b equals 1, and I get the solution. So that's how we use linear solve. These are our main features on the calculator here. Next thing I would like to have a look at, it is some other common shortcuts, which we talked about. Ctrl T for table, Ctrl I to see all the possible applications. But if we want to do some editing, we have Ctrl X for cut, Ctrl C for copy, Ctrl V for paste, undo, Ctrl Z, and redo, Ctrl Y. So these are the same shortcuts as actually we have on our calculator. If you would like to watch a video which was recorded by Peter Fox, he is talking about top 10 shortcuts on our calculator and illustrating with various applications how those shortcuts work. I talk about the tab key. So if in doubt, try tab. So in Windows settings, we can change the range of X and Y values. In graph, we press tab to jump to Y equals. In stat applications, it jumps between axes. If you have multiple sliders, it will change between the sliders. And if we have multiple windows, tab also helps with Windows. So going back to my calculator, if I see now what I've done, I have now 3 problems, and in each problem I had various stages. So going to my last screen, I will enter another problem because now I would like to talk about lists and spreadsheets. So what we'll try to do, we'll try to find the equation of the straight line passing through 2 points. So let's say my point could be x and y, but if we use x, it can interfere with our variables later. So it's better to use x1 and y1 for entering the points, and let's say 2, and another point is -3, and my second point, 5x value and 7y value. You have to press enter here as the last one. Now, so I have 2 points. 2 points is enough to draw a straight line. So if I go menu, statistics, start calculations, I can see that I can enter a linear regression. So I need to tell the calculator that my first list is x1 and my second list is y1. As you can see, this equation is automatically saved as regression equation F1. So if I press enter, I can see the gradient is 3.33 and the y-intercept is -9.67. Let's see if we can actually change those values to fractions. So if I go to the calculator screen, and now I press the variables button, I can see this is my m. So if I press enter, I still see this number, but remembering that I can change it to a fraction, so I can see that the gradient is 10/3. Similarly, in variables, I can get my y-intercept. So if I press enter, this number is displayed, but menu number, approximate to fraction, and press enter, and I get my y-intercept. Now, if I go Control-I again and go to graph, and I need to go up because this equation was saved in F1, and if I press enter, I can see the graph. So as I said, all those 3 pages, the calculator page, the spreadsheet, and the graph page are linked together. This only happens if we are using the applications. That will never happen using Scratchpad. That's why you never use Scratchpad if you actually want to do some real stuff, being in test, exam, or even practicing on your exercises. Remember, these are the applications to be used, not the Scratchpad. It is there just for some simple calculations, but not really that applicable. So I can go back to my current document, and I already use spreadsheet. So let's say that I want to do a parabola now, but I don't want to have any interference with the straight line, so I might do insert another problem. And if I go to list and spreadsheets, I can call points y1, x1 again, and it doesn't come bold because I am in problem 5, and I had those in problem 4, but problems do not interfere with one another. So let's say I want to have a parabola now. For a parabola, we need 3 points. So I go 0 and 2. Second point, -1 and 3. And I can have 1 here and 4. So again, if I enter, now I can go to menu, statistics, start calculations, but this time I wish to get a quadratic regression. So again, I need to tell the calculator that's my x values, these are my y values, and it saves my equation again. So we can see the coefficients 1.5, 0.5, and 2. So if I enter the graph screen and go up again and enter, that's my parabola. If I wish to check that it actually passes through the given points, I go to Menu, Trace, Graph Trace. So the first one is automatically the y-intercept, which is 0 and 2. But now if I type my other point, which was -1, it shows me 3, and that was actually the point. And if I type 1 again, it shows me 4. So this is our feature, which is, if I go Escape to show you again, it is Trace, Graph, Trace. So it allows you to enter your values and find what for X value, Y value is, which you could also do Control T, and you could have the table going up and down as we talked about before, and Control T again disappear. The next thing I would like to talk is about variables. We already looked at some of those variables. If I go Control I again and get a calculator here, so this time I will have statistics A, which was my A coefficient, and similarly B, they are quite nice fractions and numbers. I don't need to change them, but those values can be recalled for your further calculations if needed. So that's something we can do. But I might insert a new problem, and the other way of assigning values to variables is the following way. So let's say if I now have a new problem and I say I want A to have the value of 2, and I press enter, and I want B, and I assign the value for B -1, and I press enter, and let's say I want C, and for C I will assign the value -2. So now if I press A, it comes bold, and of course it will tell me that I said I wanted A to be 2. You can perform calculations with those, but you could also enter this into your calculator screen. So A comes bold. Remember, I need to go times x squared and plus, and you see B is bold because we already assigned a value to it, times x, and then plus C, and enter, and the parabola is drawn. See what happens if I go back to my screen, and now I change the value of A. So I could go up and bring it down here, but this time I will say I want it to be -2, and I press enter. And if I go to my graph, it automatically changed the look of the parabola because now A is negative, so our graph is reflected in the x-axis. So that's how we can use variables. I can also, let's get ourselves a new calculator screen. I can also use menu actions defined. So let's say I want to define a function f in x being, or maybe let's do some area. Let's do A in R. So I'm saying my A won't work because, as you see, I am in the same problem and I use A again. So I do new problem, calculator, menu, actions, define, and I say my area in radians equals, and let's do a simple one, pi times r squared. So r squared, that's area of the circle, of course. So now if I want to find the area of the circle with radius 5, I get area of the circle with radius 5, area of the circle with radius 2.34, and so on. But because it's defined, I can also use algebra numerical solve. So I'm saying, what is the radius if my area is equal 10.5 and I wish to find what the radius is? So if we have some equations or we have formulas, that's a good way of defining them and then trying to perform some calculations. So again, if I go now and see what I have 7 problems with various pages in each problem. You are allowed 99 pages in each problem, which of course is a lot, not that you will be using that many. But if for some reason you would like to save your document, if you go to File, again, if I press Doc and File, I can save a document as something, and that will stay in my calculator if I want to go back to it later to use it. So that is also quite important feature. I talked briefly about the catalog, a book, but what is here, I might have the first one, and let's say we're learning about sequences and series. I want to generate a sequence 5n minus 6, the variable is n, and I want the first 5 terms. So it generates the sequence for me. I could find the sum of this sequence, but just going here, or I could say sum of the sequence, and now I might do another one, 2 times 3 to the power n minus 1. I need to go down, comma, n, comma, and let's say from 1 to 6, and enter, and it tells me those 6 terms in the sequence add to 728. Another way of using the sequence is using sigma notation. So if I go in from 1 to, let's say, 5, and I put my 5n minus 6 here, I can obtain the sum of this sequence in a similar way. And if we go to catalog again, we can see various things here similar to what you had in various menus, but an interesting thing is, which is not very often used, but now it's a new feature and it is available in Press to Test. I've checked. Conversion assistant by converting units. So let's say if I want to convert units of velocity and I want to go from kilometers an hour to meters per second, I say that, and let's say 60 kilometers an hour convert to meters per second. I might convert units of capacity or volume. So if I go conversion assistant and say volume, and I want to convert, let's say, from liters to cubic centimeters, again, it puts answer, so you should start with the number, but let's say have 1.2 liters. It gives me, funny way, the answer in standard form or scientific notation, but if I bring it down, it tells me 1.2 liters is 1200 cubic centimeters. So that's just something which is a bit new in now and available in Press to Test. So going back to my PowerPoint, I would like to talk about press to test. So press to test is something you will need your calculator set up when sitting exams and also sitting tests. You probably get more instructions from your teacher in class, and you need to be aware that not all the features are available in press to test. All the function features, spreadsheet, graphing is available, but not in the relation mode. So if I go to my calculator and I have the option here, prepare, enter press to test. So what I did, I put a high level or standard level, which is the same. The preferable setting is radian. You can still change the radian to degrees when you press to test. And we have to actually untick 4 things when you scroll down. You untick disable inequality graphing, limit trigonometric functions, no tick here, and of course no tick with our polyroot simultaneous equations and so on. And then when you press that on your calculator, then you will have the blinking screen, and the color, yellow color, will tell your teacher that your calculator is in the correct mode. So charging your calculator, how to best charge? The best way is to charge via the wall adapter or wall AC power charger. You can, of course, charge via docking station if available at school. Now, student software and upgrading your operating system. It is highly recommended that you have your student software installed, and charging is more efficient if you do. Upgrading operating system is easy. You can do it yourself. File transfer and exiting press to test mode, you can do it by yourself as well. So let's talk about the latest operating system. How do we check what it is if you go to settings and status? So for CX2, the latest calculator, the latest operating system is 5.1.3. So that's what it is. I cannot show you directly the old version. Some of you might have purchased the CX, and the latest operating system is 4.5. If you want to click between degrees and radius, you need to have this operating system. If you are behind, you need to upgrade. We are nearly towards the end, so a few more comments about file management. So if I go back to my calculator, and if you have your student software and you press this button here, if you have your calculator connected, it will actually display here, and you can see various files on your computer. So I might press this, and of course it will display something on my calculator which I had there, and these are some of the pictures my students created. So the file management is if you are given an assignment and you want to send the file to your teacher, of course you save it, and you can then transfer this to your teacher and so on. So these are just some of the things you can see on your calculator. If you want to transfer documents between two calculators, you need to connect them with the short cord. And then if you go to dock and file, you would have various options when those are connected to transfer file. I don't have anything connected, so I can't send, but normally you would be able to send. I was talking about press to test. So again, to exit press to test, we do need to have the calculator connected to another calculator or connected to your student software. So that's what we had time for today. I wonder if there are any questions. So I go back to Brian and thank you everyone for listening.